You can continue to lecture.
Okay, so we saw Thomas Cole, and what was interesting is, remember, he is big on in the Hudson River School, and as I mentioned, he was very important about landscapes and about nature. And then he shows this pristine, unspoiled landscape. And then he shows a landscape where people have started to cultivate the land, build a permanent building. And to him, it's still very nice. It's still calm. It's still wonderful. But then he talks about what's going to happen with civilization. He's happy celebrating the nature aspect. But then he shows, oh, then people come and they build all these buildings and they're destructive and there's too many people and everything falls to ruin. And then he shows in last in his series that nature is coming back again to claim everything. Now remember, when we talked last semester, we also saw, when we listened to The Pedestrian, the short story, The Pedestrian, that the person who really loved nature, the pedestrian who came out at night and walked to smell the fresh air, to look at the stars, to see the vegetation, the trees, was noticing that because the government was taking over everything and making people stay in, what did he say? He said through the cracks in the sidewalk, grass was growing and plants were starting to take over the paths. So he too realized the strength and importance in that story of nature. And when we talk about the Hudson River School, we are talking about artists who celebrate nature. And it comes from a romantic movement. It's very beautiful. It's lovely. And it was the first native school of painting in the United States. As I said when we started, it was the first one to develop here, where artists started to go outside and look at nature and look at the life in the country that they were living in now, not from England. Okay, and they emphasized the natural beauty of the land. And this was very easy to do because you would just go out with your paints and your easel and your sketch pad and you could do this. You could capture the essence outside. You could use the morning light. You could use the afternoon light. You could do the evening light. A series of pictures or paintings could be done with this idea of different lighting and different times of the day. This was a mid-19th century move, and these artists were visionaries. They just wanted to show everyone how very beautiful the United States was, and they were actually very happy now to call it their home. So mostly, there were also carvers that worked during this time. And they too would work on things like when we start looking at people who carved wood to reflect areas, like a landscape that they might use on a bench. They would take things from nature and copy it. Again, the two parks that we have are the Catskill Mountains and the Adirondack Mountains, which were at that time very underdeveloped, hardly anybody living there. Lots of animals, deer, elk, moose, beautiful waterfalls, and that's what they wanted to catch. They were looking at landscapes and the land that surround them almost in a religious way. Now, last week we talked a little bit about how art of the totem pole and of the indigenous Native Americans would also reflect some of the religious ideas. Now let's think about a landscape. It's trees, right? It's just water. It's the sky. To them, it reflects peacefulness, maybe a feeling of being one with their God, all right? It also reflects a way of being thankful for what their God has provided to them. So in essence, they're looking at this beauty and they're relating it to some of the teachings of their religion, no matter what their religion or what their God is, and saying this beauty comes from a higher power. There's no way that this could happen otherwise. And it was very contagious. After a while, you could see many, many people, okay? Many people in the wilderness with their sketch pads, with their paints, trying to capture this feeling. And so there are other artists other than Cole. We have Asher Durand, who was a really great friend of Cole. And he was very, very prominent in the Hudson River School. And he first worked as a watchmaker. And he toiled in this job for a while. And then he realized that he wanted to go out in the world and paint. So in the 1830s, he began painting portraits, but then he began painting landscapes. And his work can be seen all over in museums, showing us what it looks like in the world that they're living. He was also known, okay, Asher Durand was also known for a series of paintings that he did of presidents of the United States. And I want to show you a little bit more about some of his paintings, and also for you to really focus in on things like large rock formations, water, how the sky is depicted, even in the painting that we saw where Cole is talking about how civilization will ruin these natural formations. If you look at the sky, it's gray and thunderous looking. These are all very important parts of how this school ends up painting. So we're going to do a little tour of some art at the museum from artists of the Hudson River School. And it's from the Hudson River School and the New York Historic Society. So let's take a look at that.